Alright, so I just got done watching Hitman, and I think it's one of the best movies of the year. Granted, I don't think this movie is great, but because of how bad 2024 has been, this is still one of the best movies of the year for me. First and foremost, Glen Powell and Adriana, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, are really good together here. And one of the things that was missing from Anyone But You was, it seems like Glen Powell has chemistry with everyone, but the chemistry that he has with Adriana here is really that good. And it really is sexually intense. I don't think it's on the level of Challengers, but still, I think Challengers just set the, standard that high. And they had some good comedic moments together, and you really do buy into this romance, although we all know that Glen Powell's character is definitely faking his identity. Next up, I thought Linklater gave us his best directed movie in probably years. I mean, I didn't hate Apollo 10½, but I wasn't the biggest fan of that. Next up, I thought Linklater gave us one of his best directed movies in quite some time. And the way the camera moves and how tight the script is here, it really does feel like he's very much like in a very ambitious state that I haven't really felt from his movies in a really, really long time. And at the core, I think this movie, although it's a multi-genre movie, it's really about how if people really put in the effort, they can actually change. But that is easier said than done. And even though we learned this lesson through someone who isn't exactly the best person mentally, it's still a lesson that we can all learn. The comedy for this movie is actually really good as well, but there's one character in this movie that definitely has the most funny jokes in this movie, and that would be Jasper, who is just really hilarious in this movie, who's also just sort of a hater for Gary. Honestly, he's not even just a sort of hater, he's a straight up hater for Gary. And I'm forgetting the rest of the cast in this movie, but the supporting cast, in the police office, FBI, whatever it is, they were also really good as well. Like I alluded before, this movie is a multi-genre movie. It's a comedy, it's a romance, it's a neo-noir, but also through the soundtrack and not necessarily through the story. Unless it's through the narration of the character, although we don't really get a lot of narration in this movie. But when it's supplemented, it's definitely utilized very well. My criticism for this movie is simply that sometimes the writing feels like it's trying to be smart, although it's not really being that smart, and that it thinks it's being super insightful when it's not really being insightful at all. Like I said, the philosophy of this movie is pretty much change, which, once again, this movie isn't saying anything that different. And the pacing for this movie, although the script is really tight, when it came to the screen, I felt like it was a little bit too slow at moments. So overall, Hitman seems like a movie that I would love. It's directed by one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. It's also starring a man who I think is going to be one of the biggest movie stars for the next couple of years, if he's not already one. And also, it has a really charismatic leading actress. But for some reason, I feel a little bit disappointed with this movie, especially with the reviews that we've been getting. But overall, I still think Hitman is a really solid movie that if you cannot see this movie in theaters, you should definitely check it out on Netflix.